That morning I walked out to the dock and froze. 30 people stood on my land, fishing lines cast into my lake lawn chairs dug into my grass, a banner stretched across my gate that read, "Community Fishing Day." My private property sign was torn in half, the padlock cut clean through, and right in the center of it all was Eleanor Hayes, the president of our HOA, holding a clipboard like a weapon. I didn't know if I was witnessing insanity or the birth of a new kind of theft, one wrapped in the word community. My name's Robert Caldwell. I'm 62, a wildlife photographer by trade, and a man who spent most of his life trying to avoid drama. The lake behind my home. My lake has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandmother Margaret left it to me with one note scrawled on the back of an old photograph. Stand your ground with dignity. I didn't realize how literal that advice would become. It all started a few weeks before that fishing day. I was repairing the dock one calm June morning when Eleanor strutted down my driveway with 3 strangers in tow. She stopped a few feet from where I stood and said, "This lake belongs to all of us." I looked up from my hammer, wondering if I'd heard her right. "Excuse me." She smiled, the kind of smile you see right before someone says something ridiculous. "We've decided the lake should be shared. Families in Lakeview Estates have nowhere to fish. It's unfair." I told her the deed, the taxes, the survey, all of it proved the land and water were private, separate from the HOA entirely. She shrugged. "Our attorney will send you the paperwork." No attorney ever did. What showed up instead was an email from the HOA board titled Shared Amenity Access, Marina Facility. Attached was a 3-page document written in enough legal jargon to choke a judge. It demanded 7-day community access, rotating family slots, a liability waiver, and a clause giving the HOA permission to maintain my property if they felt it wasn't up to standard. I read it twice, drank my coffee, and laughed out loud. Then I called Eleanor. She answered with that fake sunshine voice. I asked for the statute that allowed a private lake to become a shared amenity. She said she'd have to check with council and get back to me. She never did. That's when I drove to the county clerk's office, a squat brick building that smelled like bleach and old paper, and pulled certified copies of everything the deed plat map, 30 years of taxes. Every page was a brick in the wall I planned to keep standing. When I came home, my neighbor Willa was watering her flowers. She's one of the few decent folks left in the subdivision. She asked if everything was okay. I told her it was just a property misunderstanding. She gave me that look, you know, the one that says, "You're in deeper than you think." The next morning, the neighborhood group chat lit up like fireworks. Someone posted a photo of my dock at sunrise, captioned, "Selfish man hoards nature while kids have nowhere to fish." The photo was one of mine from a 2003 wildlife magazine. I don't even use social media, but Willa sent me screenshots. The comments poured in. Typical rich outsider. Ungrateful. He should be forced to share. I printed every comment, dated them, and slid them into a folder labeled Evidence. By Friday, things had teeth. I walked down to the marina and found 5 people fishing on my dock. A sunburned man with a beer in hand told me, "Eleanor said it's open for the neighborhood." When I asked them to leave, the teenager muttered, "Boomers ruin everything." They packed up slow, leaving trash and muddy footprints. As they passed, the man said, "Communities work when people cooperate. You'll regret being so rigid." It wasn't exactly a threat, but it stuck in my mind like a fishhook. That night I ordered 4 weatherproof motion cameras, the same kind I used to film grizzlies in Yellowstone. I mounted them around the dock. If anyone came back, I'd have proof sharper than any argument. The following Tuesday, an envelope slid under my door. Emergency HOA meeting. Attendance required. I wasn't even a member, but apparently they had summoned me. The meeting room smelled like lemon polish and ambition. 15 residents sat on folding chairs, all eyes on Eleanor at the front table. She opened with landscaping updates, then said, "We have a matter of significant concern, the use of the community lake." Community lake. I nearly laughed. She talked about families, about shared joy, about children with nowhere to fish. Hands went up, nods spread through the room. No one asked about the deed. No one asked for proof. When she finally turned to me, the room went silent. I stood folder in hand and said, "This lake has never been part of the HOA. I have the deed tax records and survey right here." She smiled that same polite smile and replied, "Legal technicalities don't erase moral responsibility." Then she proposed a motion encourage cooperation or face social exclusion and formal complaint. The vote 11 in favor, 2 against. The 2 were Willa and an old man I barely knew. Eleanor grinned like a cat that had swallowed the canary. That's when I knew it wasn't about fishing, it was about power. 2 days later I found my gate lock cut clean off. The chain lay coiled in the grass like a dead snake. 10 people were already there, picnic blankets, coolers, kids chasing dragonflies. One older woman waved at me like I was late to my own party. I asked them to leave. A man in his 30s accused me of harassment. Phones came up like shields. I called dispatch. Deputy Iris Caldwell, no relation, arrived and reviewed my documents. "They have 10 minutes, she said. Half the group left, half stayed until she repeated the word trespass with the weight of a gavel. That day I realized this wasn't going to stop. Not with reason, not with courtesy. Saturday came, and with it the storm. 30 residents, 2 grills, a giant banner stretched between my posts. Lakeview Estates, Community Fishing Day. Eleanor stood under it, clipboard in hand, smile painted on like armor. I walked right up to her. "This is private property." She tilted her head, calm as a snake. "We're demonstrating the value of shared spaces." I pulled the original deed from my back pocket and held it up. "This says otherwise." She knocked it out of my hand. Her husband stepped forward until I could smell his coffee. "You're making enemies of the whole neighborhood," he whispered. The crowd started closing in, forming a loose semicircle like wolves testing a lone elk. My heart thudded in my chest. I've seen pack behavior before. It's not loud. It's steady, relentless. I called dispatch again. Deputy Caldwell returned this time with backup. "Do you have any documentation that grants HOA access?" she asked Eleanor. Eleanor handed over a printed email highlighted in yellow. Attorney confirmed it. What attorney? The deputy asked. Eleanor blinked. "I'll have to check my records." That was the moment her mask cracked. The deputy turned to the crowd. "You're trespassing on private property. You have 10 minutes to leave or face citation." People began folding chairs. Eleanor's face went red-purple. She pointed at me, voice shaking. "You will regret this. The neighborhood will remember." Her husband grabbed her arm and led her away. I stood there surrounded by litter beer cans, cigarette butts, a child's flip-flop on my grandmother's bench. I took photos of everything, time-stamped them, filed them away. That night I spread the documents on my desk, feeling the full weight of 50 years of ownership pressing down. For a second I almost gave up. Maybe I was being stubborn. Maybe it would have been easier to let them have their fishing weekends, pretend it didn't matter. But then I picked up that old photograph of my grandmother. On the back, in faded ink, "Stand your ground with dignity." I whispered, "All right, Grandma, I hear you." Monday morning I drove downtown and climbed the stairs above a coffee shop to see Malcolm Hastings, an attorney known for handling neighborhood disputes. Calm, silver hair, steady eyes, the kind of man who'd seen it all. I laid everything out, the deed, the footage, the screenshots. He paused on the frame of Eleanor, knocking the deed from my hand. "You shot this yourself?" "Yeah," I said. "Old habits die hard." He nodded slowly. "Most clients bring me blurry phone clips and outrage. You brought me a trial." We dug deeper. Turned out no lawyer had ever been retained by the HOA. Eleanor made the whole thing up. Malcolm drafted a 10-page cease and desist letter, formal, sharp, impossible to ignore. Stop trespassing. Remove defamatory posts. Pay damages or face civil and criminal action. 3 days later, Willa texted me. Eleanor called an emergency board meeting. Title says, "Responding to legal threats from a hostile resident." Perfect. I was the hostile resident. At the next HOA meeting, the room was packed wall to wall. People wanted a show. Eleanor started with her usual venom. Robert has been aggressive, intimidating, retaliatory. He's threatening our sense of community. Malcolm stood, adjusted his tie, and said evenly, "We'll need 10 minutes." He plugged in my hard drive. The lights dimmed. First clip, Eleanor hitting the deed from my hand. Second, the banner on my property. Third, her claiming attorney approval. Then the silence thick enough to hear the air conditioner hum. Malcolm looked at the board. "This is a pattern of defamation, trespass, and fabrication of legal authority." A man in the front row raised his hand. I motioned to remove Eleanor Hayes as HOA president. Hands shot up, one after another. The vote was unanimous -1. Hers. Eleanor stood up pale and trembling and walked out without her clipboard. Just like that, the Queen lost her crown. The acting president apologized publicly and signed a settlement. Eleanor would issue a formal apology, delete every post, pay $15,000 in legal fees and $5,000 for using my photos, and stay 500 feet away from my property for 5 years. 2 weeks later, she stood before the same residents reading her apology so quietly the mic barely picked it up. She admitted every lie, every fabrication. No one clapped. The room just exhaled like everyone had been holding their breath for months. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just felt still. I mailed 2 checks that week, one to the county youth fishing program, one to the carpenter who fixed my dock boards. The lake went quiet again. Now people ask before they cast a line. Sometimes I say yes, sometimes no. Either way, it's my choice. I still see Eleanor sometimes wearing an orange vest picking up trash on the roadside for community service. Rumor says she and her husband are selling the house. I neither confirm nor deny. Most mornings now I sit at the dock with my camera waiting for the sun to strike the water the way my grandmother taught me. Boundaries, she said, aren't walls. They're choices you defend. So here's my question to you when someone demands what's yours and calls it community. Where do you draw the line? Because sometimes standing your ground isn't selfish, it's survival.